Not the usual start to the videos, but I cannot find 1/4 inch corkboard anywhere for the project in this video. We've come to Wix, the first stop. Don't think you'll be able to see it, but we just tried Home Bargains. They did not have any in. Screwfix doesn't have any in online. Wix didn't have any in. Nowhere has any in. So unfortunately, Bezos has had to take more of my money, is what it is.
Sick! And that looks way better. Fancy new setup. Does the light suit us? Right, you saw that. That was a bit of a fuck on. My name is BeardedFist. Welcome in. Grab yourself a cuppa or whatever you like to drink, and let's talk Warhammer. At Christmas, my dad got me the Knight Valor Strike Lance Battle Box. I think that's the one. I've been waiting to do an army outside of Space Marines. I've tried Votan. I thought I was going to do Death Guard, but didn't quite like it. And then I was in the shower the other day, TMI, and this idea just came to me. An idea for a Knight's army that I think will look pretty sick when it's done. Before I started painting though, I needed to complete the bases, just due to the process of what I wanted to do. So let's get into that. Okay, now the cork is on its way. I also 3D printed some rocks. This rock. Ooh! This rock was the bane of my existence. I had to start by removing all the print lines. I've got a Bamboo A1 Mini. It is an amazing printer, but FDM, when you print something like that, it will leave layer lines as you're printing. And there were tons of them. And these needed to all be removed. So when I painted the rock, it didn't just look like a 3D printed rock. It kind of looked like a normal rock. Now, some rocks, depending where you are in the world, do have those lines, so I didn't mind leaving some behind because they can look a little bit natural. But I started with sandpaper, and that didn't really work. After all that sanding, all that fucking on, we have a rock with less layer lines. Doesn't mean they don't have any, unfortunately. I ended up with another Dremel. That's what ended up making it work. Now to pop his legs together in preparation for the cork actually arriving today. Then it came to the building of the legs while I was waiting for Amazon to deliver me cork. Big old Jeff Bezos blessing me with the ability to buy many things, one of them being cork. So I started with the legs. I knew I wanted to get a pose that was a bit more dynamic than what you can build in the instructions, and that it would take a bit of time, but oh boy did I underestimate this task massively. At least though, in my kit, don't know about anyone else's, there was hardly any mode lines, so that saved us a canny bit of time, and I think I'd cry if there was more mode lines, to be honest with you. Okay, so I have these bits built, I have this ready. I'm going to try and do a dry fit so I can get the legs stuck together. This was when I realised I needed to get the base at least somewhat there so that I could dynamically pose the legs a bit better. To start the process, I had to stick the cork to the actual base itself. Little princess. Wife's loading the car with some stuff, so she can't go out. That's why I'm not letting her out. Also, just a side note here, do not mix plastic cement glue and super glue. The fumes almost burnt the eyeballs out of my sockets. I just wouldn't do that. It was not fun. As you just saw, I've just stuck the cork on. Gonna let that dry for a bit of time and then rip it up. And then we're gonna come back to getting this base ready. That was a fight. And everywhere I say says to use super glue, it will just not work. So I have used PVA glue and we'll have to wait for that to dry now. Now we have the cork stuck down. It's time to get the rock on the base. I knew I was gonna build a lot of the base around the rock, so I wanted it positioned properly. So I started by sticking the rock down to the cork where I wanted that positioned. After that was down, I'd obviously ripped a lot of cork off the base, off the sides, so that it went conform to the oval base. I then used that cork, so I wasn't wasting anything, to stick down next to the rock to create a shoreline or a little bank. Next, to give it that bank or shoreliney feel next to a lake or a river, I then ripped and took some snippers and snipped the cork to kind of create a bit of an embankment. It wasn't perfect and far from it, but at least when you're on a beach, when you're on a river, the angles up are never perfect, so it plays into the natural sort of aesthetic of the base. And then once that was down, where I'd ripped and tore those little bits and snipped those little bits off, again trying to reduce wastage, to fill the gaps, I took some PVA glue, put that in between the gaps of the shoreline, and took some tweezers and the snippers, and I shoved the extra bits of cork into there, or sprinkled the bits of cork on. That did leave little divots, which creates more of a natural surface, but it also meant I was reducing wastage and I didn't have huge gaps in my shoreline on my base. Now this is where the process got quite difficult. I didn't do any research going into this. I'm a professional. What professional needs to do research, you know what I mean? The leg wouldn't pose the way I wanted it to. And this kit isn't anywhere near as flexible as I thought it was going to be. Assuming big robot legs, a bit like the Redemptor Dreadnought and things, I thought there would be more posability. And this is where I had to whip out the milliput and start sculpting. Just want to add in here, I've never sculpted before. Remember about 30 seconds ago where I said I'm a professional? At this point, my camera, phone, died. And this was partway through the process of sculpting. I'm going to pass to past me to handle chatting about the sculpting. I managed to finish off the sculpting. What I ended up having to do was put a pin in between here, pin them together, and then sculpted it once it was pinned. Now I've just got to wait 24 hours for that to dry, and I need to go pick up the rest of the bits for the base. Now, it's just time to power forward. Once that upper bit was done, we could just go for it. I took some of this AK Interactive Muddy Ground, I'd never used it before, the stuff's sick, and scraped that out the pot and put that all over the base. Now it is really fucking cool. Not only is it massive compared to all the other texture pastes that you get, the product dries really, really nice as well and leaves really good texture on the actual base itself. Quick note though, while I was doing it, the pot was here, and I was like thinking, putting on the bases. I was almost huffing the stuff. It's canny strong, don't huff it. It did take a little while to dry, but that's because I put quite a thick layer on. But leaving it just overnight, let it dry nicely. And once the bases were dry, I then took a matte black spray and based all the bases in the matte black. The matte black was from Colourforge, just in case you're following along at home. Now for the fun part, getting to actually paint the base. In the bits where there was going to be ice, I took Corvax White, my biggest dry brush, which was a £1 makeup brush from Poundland, and dry brushed all over where the ice was going to be. I did go quite heavy as well. I wanted a little bit black, but not too much black to show through. So it was quite a heavy application. Once the white was pretty much dry, and I will note all of this process was just simply dry brushing, bar the rock, but we'll come to that. Next, I took Mungfang Brown and dry brushed all the shorelines or where my miniatures would be walking on just ground. And I followed up the Mungfang Brown with Death World Forest, dry brushing that on top. I will note, the brown wasn't fully dry, so I did a little bit of wet blending as well. Not when it was wet, but it was just, not all the parts were dry, so I got a nice colour. Now, I did love the way this looked, and for some reason, I had to go fucking ruin it, of course. I decided to add North African Dust pigment powder on top of the bases. Simply mixed it with water and brushed that all over, and it ruined it. It made it look like a desert. I don't want it to look like a desert. While that was drying and I was crying, I got round to doing the rock. I love the way Games Workshop does rocks. Look really nice, so I just followed that process. That was putting a layer of Dawnstone over it, and again, because it was in black underneath, I did want to leave some natural darkness to it, so I just did one layer. Once that was dry, I used the shade Agrat's Earth Tone to get that beautiful rock look, and that was it. Rock complete. Now it's time to fix my mistake. I waited until the pigment powder was 90% of the way there dry, so I could get some of that light colour. Again, all dry brushing, I used Vallejo light grey blue across all the shore parts where the pigment powder was. I followed that up with two separate dry brushing coats, one quite thick with Corvax White and then one quite light. I don't hate the way they look. I don't love it. It's something that I can come back and address in the future. But this project, the scope of it and how much time I had before I took them to a tournament, I just needed them done. And from now on, we are calling it an alien desert-y, snow desert looking thing. It's an alien planet. It can be whatever we want it to be. And again, we are on another new challenge for me. Pinning minis to bases. Now, the hobby drill is cheap and the bits are not very sharp and shite. They could barely drill into the plastic, so I had to adapt. This is where my brain just unlocked and genius struck. I took out the milliput and mixed them up, and I stuck it into the toes of the big knight and into the middle of the feet of the armatures. And once I'd fully let that cure for 24 hours, the process of drilling, measuring, repeating, making sure I was getting in the right place started. Little tip here, I use glass-headed pins. All I had to do was to snip the pointy part off and make sure that when they went through the base that they measured into the feet correctly. And what this did was it gives a really good contact point under the base for the super glue to adhere to, and it just hopefully will keep it locked in a little bit longer. Another tip as well, when I was looking at getting the pinning in the right place, so I'd done one in the toe and then I was going to do one on the other toe into the rock, I dipped the metal pin into some yellow paint, took that out, put the knight's foot onto the pin at the ice, turned it, pressed it down where it was going to go into the rock. That left me a little bit of yellow paint behind and allowed me to know exactly where to drill. Plenty of super glue later to attach the bead at the bottom of the base and the pins to the knight's feet, and the knights were stuck on there. As you probably all saw, I just went outside and grabbed some rocks to fix my toe issue. It looks okay. Once there's snow on there, you'll see. All that's left to do now is paint up those rocks, put some resin on, some snow, all very simple steps, bit of PVA glue, etc. Thank you all for watching. Please make sure to like, comment what you thought of this process, and drop a subscribe if you enjoyed the content. I'm trying to build a community here. I'm not looking to make this my full-time job. I just purely enjoy doing content. Next month, I'm going to be showing the whole painting process of the knights as well, because I've got quite a cool paint scheme. Finally, here it is, my knight's bases. Let's continue the hobby together.